Okay, good evening. I would like to call the February 6th meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Since we have so many people with us here in the room and people on the Zoom, I'll just start with a few introductions. So my name is Susan Brzee. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. And Eric Littman and Sabina Ernst are also members of the Planning Commission. We have two members of the Planning Commission on the Zoom, Sarah McLeod and Heidi Klein. And Linda Blosch is the town planner who assists and guides and leads the work of the Planning Commission here in the town. And John Abbott is here, who's also the town administrator. So I'm just going to start with a quick housekeeping, and then we will turn our attention to the first order of business. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I know it's a lot to get out of your cozy house on a cold evening, and we really appreciate your participation, your questions, your interest. First thing is to just review the agenda. Tonight, we will have time for public comments. We would prefer if you would use that time for items that are not on the agenda. Then we appreciate our guests tonight from Stantec and CCRPC, which is the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, who are here to talk to Jericho residents about a project that is currently underway to work on a sidewalk in the Riverside Village Center area. Our next order of business will be a discussion by the Planning Commission on a different pedestrian-oriented project that's path from Jericho Corners to Riverside, which is at a much earlier stage in the process. And we've just received a report from the consultant about that project, and we're going to be discussing that tonight. Then we were going to proceed. You might be aware that the town recently adopted a new town plan, and the Planning Commission is doing some work to develop specific deliverables around town plan implementation. The Planning Commission is going to have a discussion, plan to have a discussion of that item. And then we will have some regular business. We're doing some planning for town meeting, some staff reports, other business, planning for our next meetings, executive session if required, and then adjourn. Linda has recommended that we do make a change to the agenda for tonight, that we table item number 6, which is to dive into some goals around the town plan for a couple of reasons. One is that the work to prepare for that got some new information, so there need to be changes to that. And also we want to allow enough time for these other discussions. So we want to delay that. So I need a motion to table item number 6.
Motion to table item number 6.
Second. All those in favor of tabling item number 6 to a future meeting?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
Aye.
so thank you. So we'll table item number 6. Any other comments or changes needed for the agenda from the Planning Commission? Okay. Then the next topic is public comment. And just to remind you, if possible, there will be time for public comment when we get to the next topic, which is to talk about the sidewalk and also comment about the Corners to Riverside path. Right now, I would like to invite public comment for anything for the Planning Commission that is not on tonight's agenda. Jim, and if you would please come forward, use the microphone, which is at this table right here, and introduce yourself. And while Jim is coming forward, I'll also remind people, if you're here in the room, to please sign in on the clipboard at the door. And if you're online, if you would please just provide your contact information in the chat. And our recording secretary, Nancy, will take that down so we know that you were here. And so, Jim, go ahead. Briefly.
My name is Jim Carroll. I live on Bulger Hill Road, and I'll be very brief. First, we've been trying to find the wastewater treatment study. Is that something that we just don't have the technical skills to find, or is it not available?
The one that's underway right now,
Yes.
it's in draft mode still, and it'll be released in the near future. 60%.
Is there any reason why we couldn't get a copy of the draft?
Yes, it's not finalized yet. It's fine. Which
But
means
it's a
we're
public,
providing
it's a
feedback.
public document. I mean, do I have to send a Freedom of Information Act request to get a copy of the draft document? I will.
The planning commission expects to receive it in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And Linda and I have talked about having a review of the report on an upcoming planning commission meeting, which we hope will be in March. So it's imminent. They're just dotting the i's and crossing the
I'm just
t's
saying
on
to
the
you, as a
report.
citizen.
I haven't seen it yet
well,
either,
but the
but we'll
thing
see
is
it
that
very
we're
soon.
paying people, the money's going out the door, they're doing work. It's been promised for a long time.
Yes,
And
I,
there's a lot of us that know what we're doing. We know Jericho, and we'd like to see what our money has purchased.
we'll be
And
getting
the
it very
quality of
soon.
it, because the number of times in 45 years, we've gotten to the point of a finished report with citizen satisfaction is extremely low.
This is a 60% report, so it won't be finalized. We're seeing an iterative version for exactly that reason.
Transparency and democracy is never good. I'd also like to share with you something that I think is very helpful. It talks about the policy needs of the state of Vermont from the Joint Fiscal Committee as it pertains to all of the funding sources. And I didn't have a printer that could pump it all out, but it's from the Joint Fiscal Office. It's a brief about affordable housing in Vermont. It's a really good piece. It's objectively written by the staff of the legislature to inform our elected officials on all of the opportunities, and it speaks to a lot of the things that we're all frustrated with.
What's the title? Affordable housing
Affordable housing in Vermont,
in Vermont?
January 14th, 22.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm working on a couple of other things that go to the heart of the issue that I have with the perpetual housing limitations in the Jericho regulations. And I started studying constitutional law in 1966, which I apologize for to John. But there's major problems from a constitutional and from a common law perspective with the way Jericho's perpetuity burden places on any person who owns or rents a affordable housing project. And I'll just give you a simple example. If I could build a house for $350 in 2016, because all of the costs of a home have gone up, according to Keisha Ram, who's a credible source, 78%, wages have not kept up. So in effect, a home purchased at that point in time would actually decline in value, comparatively speaking, because energy's up, all of the elements are up, but the wages that drives the formula are not up. So I think we in Jericho, as enlightened people, should move away from a negative-based formula to a positive-based formula. And it's different if you have a nonprofit. But if we really want to move the needle, and we have a resolution from the select board that says we really want to move the needle, we have a dismal track record. And I can see, and if you read these studies, which I will try to get you the links to, I'm not very good at the technology, there's major constitutional issues. And I don't think Jericho really wants to spend more money dealing with the constitutional issues of something that denies the equity in a person's home to the person who can least afford to use it. And I'll end with the person who really does a great job at taking care of their home, invests in their home, expands their home, is denied that return on value with the way Jericho's is written.
Right. Okay. I understand what you're saying. Thank you. Anybody else have public comment for items not on tonight's agenda? Okay, anybody online? If you have a comment not on tonight's agenda, we're just gonna look at the screen. Just give us a second to
Chuck.
switch.
Yes, Chuck has his hand up, but can't see him. Nice.
Okay, Chuck, Lacey,
Hi,
briefly, please.
sure. You did, I think we have a town plan that we can be proud of in terms of the direction it's set. I want to express my concern about select board actions or non-actions on two of the priorities. And you've set yourself up as the body that reminds the select board in terms of the town plan. Two of the priorities featured in the town plan have to do with staffing and capacity and wastewater and water. And I think that the select board is dropping the ball in two areas. One is they're doing a staffing study, but the staffing study is not rooted in the needs of the town to implement the town plan. It's basically a staffing study where someone goes around and interviews the people in the staff and comes back with a report, looks for other municipalities. There's no indication in the contract that the job is to figure out what Jericho needs to implement the town plan. I mean, that is the question that you raised, and it's not in the contract. It does not appear in the contract to be the question that the consultant was asked to answer. The second thing has to do with water and wastewater. And as you know, that's been going on for a long time. I've recently gotten to know a little bit about the 1997 wastewater study that Jericho did with Stone Environmental in 1997. It actually won an award from the American Planning, an annual award from the American Planning Association. It was in the town plan to be implemented for a couple town plans. It was later dropped in 2011 because that plan, the award-winning plan, was out of date, and then the select board waited 12 years to initiate another study, and that's the one that we're waiting for right now. We're supposed to get some results back in March. I was really surprised to see that the select board is not earmarking any money for water or wastewater projects in the 2024 budget. There are 8 reserve funds that the town keeps, things like equipment, roads, records restoration, a number, 3 or 4 of them are over $100,000. The fire department keeps a reserve fund that we fund for equipment replacement. And to see nothing in there and no reserve fund for water and wastewater, to me is, really disappointing. The town plan does not say we're only moving ahead when we get free money. We are obligated to move ahead based on the strategy that we've adopted for planning, which is to restrict middle and low income people from most of town with the idea that we're going to put them in the village centers. And we're obligated, I believe, to move ahead with this, water and wastewater. So I think it would be important for and I also want to point out that at the end of the budget that's now being discussed, will be 19% of the way through the 8-year period of your town plan. Okay. So I don't think this is a time to say, oh, well, we'll get it right next year. Well, if we get it right next year, we're already, well into the 8-year cycle for this plan. So I think it's really important that the Planning Commission insists that there is money that goes into a reserve fund this year and every year for water and wastewater. That's what the select board approved for a town plan. And I think it's important, it's essential that the town grapples with what it needs in terms of the government capacity to get the town plan accomplished. And that's what the consultant needs to be working on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Aaron, did you have your hand up?
I do. Linda's a little hard to hear. Could you please pull the microphone closer to maybe, yeah.
Is that better, Erin?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Aaron. Anybody else online have a comment about something that's not on tonight's agenda? Okay, plowing forward, onward. The next topic is a presentation from our consultant Stantec about a project that is underway currently, and I assume that that's why a lot of people are here this evening, which is a project to construct a sidewalk on Route 15 in the Riverside Village Center. And this project has been primarily grant funded, and we have the benefit of professional project management being provided to the town of Jericho from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. And that project manager is here with us tonight, Sarapalli. And I will turn it over to him. The plan is to give an overview of the project, kind of making sure to get everybody up to speed on where we are right now and what the plan is going forward. And then we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sai Sarapalli, Senior Transportation Planning Engineer at the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. I am a municipal project manager assisting the town. So I'm like a professional engineer helping the town with managing this project. If you remember, CCRPC funded a scoping project in 2021. And we completed a scoping study at that time, and the Selectboard selected a preferred alternative to construct a sidewalk along eastern side of Route 15 between Jericho Market and Park Street. So, and then the town applied for a state grant program, which is called Bike Ped Program. And the town received, the application was approved and they received the grant. It's a reimbursement grant. So as the project progresses, the town applied for reimbursement. And there is it's a 80-20 distribution of funds. So 80% coming from the state and 20% from the town. So, once, we started this project, we selected Stantec based on qualifications, review, and scoring. We selected Stantec for the design of sidewalk, and we got Stantec on board. And they have collected existing data. They've completed a survey of the topo. They also collected all the utilities information and like a topo survey is completed, and then we have a conceptual plan with sidewalk alignment and showing potential impacts to and within the existing right of way. So we are here to give this information to the public and get some input, and also take this information and see if we can make any changes, or if there are any real concerns in this project from the public. So I'll pass it on to Israel.
All right, thanks, Sai. So I have a brief presentation, just a handful of slides. I want to spend most of our time kind of going through the plan. I developed another plan that shows all the line work and impacts and property lines as our surveyor provided. So we'll spend most of our time on that. If you have any questions as I'm going, feel free to stop me and jump in, and let's jump into it. So first slide here is just the project team. So Linda is leading it up for the town, and then Sai, as he said, is coming in as the municipal project manager. I am the from Stantec Consulting, and I'm the design engineer and project manager from the design side. And our VTrans project manager, project supervisor isn't here tonight, but that is Deborah Pierce. So the purpose tonight is to talk about the project location, existing conditions. I kind of went over some of that, a little on the project background and history, talk about the project development process and where we are along that process, and then review the conceptual design and discuss the next steps. So just to talk really briefly about the project location, it is from the Jericho Market down here up to Park Street here. It's on the east side, connecting existing sidewalk at Park Street to the existing shared use path on the other side of Jericho Market. Just a couple bullets on the existing conditions. It's a speed limit of 35 miles an hour. It's got variable shoulder widths that are roughly 2 to 6 feet wide. The traffic is approximately 8,200 AADT, and that's average annual daily traffic. The sidewalk is there's existing sidewalk on the west side, but nothing on the east. The state right of way in this area is 66 feet, also known as a flow rod right of way. There's area utilities on the east side, gas line also on the east side, and water line on the west side. Just a couple of dates and points along the project timeline. So this project is based on the scoping study that was completed in 2021, as I mentioned, which is the title sheet of that study. And the purpose was to create a link between the existing sidewalks. It's filling in that missing gap on the east side. There was a local concerns meeting done in December 16th, 2020, followed by an alternatives presentation meeting that was done April 15th, 2021. We got select board presentation on May 6th of 2021, followed by the endorsement on May 13th. And at that meeting, the select board endorsed the alternative of going with a green strip with a 5-foot sidewalk. There were a number of alternatives reviewed prior to that, but that's where we really honed in on the alternative that you're going to see tonight. And then after that, there was a bike ped grant awarded on July 2021. And as Cy mentioned, that's an 80% federal, 20% local match grant. Just jumping into the project development process. So we typically have these 4 points of the process. So we go into project definition, and that's the scoping study. That process has already been completed. That culminated with the select board endorsement of the preferred alternative. Then the funding process, that was grant funding, so that has also been completed. And so at this point, we're in the engineering phase. So as I mentioned, we did the existing survey, and we are jumping into looking at how everything's going to lay out and what the impacts are going to be. And after that process comes the bidding and construction. So over here. So as you can see, I have a color plan here that's the entire project. So I'm going to zoom in and just kind of walk us down the project from south to north and talk a little bit about potential impacts as we get in there. If we get to your property and I zoom right by it, feel free to tell me to slow down and we can look at it a little deeper. And these PDFs can all be provided electronically after if you want to look at it more closely. So starting right out in front of Jericho Market and the Union Bank, you can see we're kind of keeping a fairly sizable green strip in this area. We did make one change to the alternative that was endorsed by the select board, and that is that we varied the green strip a little bit to avoid relocation of the utility poles. By relocating these poles, they would essentially all have to move back, which would have been a lot more impacts on private properties and would require the taking of some significant trees that are good, nice shade trees on yards. So we did make that change. So you can see there is a bit of meander as we go down this path to the green strip will vary from about 6 feet down to about 3 feet to avoid utilities. So it's going through, you see on the next property, this is the Mill Road property, Old Mill. Not much to say here. We did look at future potential plan that might come here and make sure our access was in the same location that site plan had. Another utility pole, we're staying in front of that utility pole.
Whoa, can you go back?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, so you're looking at, this is Pam Partial. I'm with Calvary Episcopal Church, which is right next to the Old Mill Green sign there. it looks like you are taking enough space off of there that we won't even be able to do our major fundraiser every year because that's involved with the Harvest Market weekend. And if you do the sidewalk the way you have it set up right now, our sausage booth will be right on the sidewalk.
So we're taking, it's approximately 10 feet. So that's about a 5-foot green strip and then the 5-foot sidewalk. This
That's
other
10
green, that's gonna revert back to grass. When we're done the project, that will be re-turfed.
Yeah, but we have a sausage booth that we set up out there that will probably go right onto the edge of the sidewalk. Because all of the cooking is done behind the booth and it backs right up to the porch of the church.
Okay. Yeah, does the town have, a way to permit that or have access to that during their harvest market? I would assume that there could be some type of accommodation for short term.
But it's a state right of way.
Yeah, it is state right of way.
No idea what the sausage booth ordinance is.
Yeah, but we need to balance our budget too. That's our major fundraiser for the entire year.
So, is there an agreement or anything with the state? Because it's in the state right of way. So I don't know if there is any agreement or any MOU written to set up the booth, or it's just grandfathered in.
I think it's just grandfathered in. We actually have markers out there for where the booth goes. There's 3 large PVC caps. So you could go out and measure it and see how close it is. The front one is to the edge of the sidewalk where you're planting it.
Joe.
Yeah, we just don't have any room to move everything back farther.
Joe, can you come to the table and use the microphone? Are you asking a different question or answering that question? Okay.
Yeah.
My question is this, as you go through this and people bring up questions, if you could tell us what kind of topography from the edge of the new walk back to the limit of the right of way. A lot of it's going to depend, if they just pull stuff back. If it's a steep grade, let the landowner know or whatever, because there might be an option just to pull it back farther. But is the limit of the green the limit of disturbance?
That is, yes.
Okay.
This back line here, where you see the triangles, that's limited to service.
So I mean, if you have relatively flat topography there, it might not be a problem.
Yeah, generally, this is gonna be relatively flat for the entire corridor. There are a couple towards the end that get a little steeper, but there are cross sections available too, so if anybody wants to jump through.
Yeah. So that was just my question is
Yeah.
the green is limited disturbance, and if these questions come up, but if I don't think there's too many places where there's considerable grade
Yeah.
off the edge of it. So.
Well,
that was my only-
there is a bit of a grade on the south side where it drops down a little bit towards the dirt roadway there to where they're going to do new construction.
So the church is probably not the only ones where it seems like, I think that the takeaway is that the town needs to determine what the policy will be about access to the sidewalk during harvest market for both private users like yourselves as well as public access, because there's probably lots of different situations that will arise. Is this on this topic or a different question? Okay, can you come forward?
Peter Booth. Is there any way you can indicate where the current, the white line that marks sort of the edge of the road is right now on that map? Because I'm thinking about the church like that. No, I know where the white line is in relation to the church. If you could say the white line's right there, I'd be able to say, oh, I think that's probably not going to be a problem.
Yeah, so this dashed line is actually the roadway white line. And then where this green starts would be the edge of pavement or the future edge of pavement.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So is there a way then to move the sidewalk or eliminate some of that green towards the edge of the road and have the sidewalk move closer to the road at that point?
So the state typically wants us to get 5 feet of green strip wherever we can, and that is for snow storage when they plow. So if we get rid of this green strip and have the sidewalk right up against the roadway, then essentially the plow pushes the snow onto the road or onto the sidewalk, which is really not preferable for pedestrians.
I think for a 2-day use, the town should be able to figure out how you can continue to access the space you need, you or other users of that take advantage of that space. If anything, you'll have more traffic because now it's easier to walk. Hopefully it'll be easier to walk on that side of the road. Sabina said we have somebody online with their hand up. I can't see who it is. Kristen Palmer, do you have a question?
Yeah, we have a question about the state road it's only a 3-rod road. So is this sidewalk going to be in the state right of way, or is this land being taken from the neighboring property owners through eminent domain?
There's a 4-rod road in this area, so it's a 66-foot right of way. And so this line you can see here right under my cursor is the right of way line.
The dashed line?
The blue line where his cursor
Oh,
is.
I
or
see it now.
This green line.
So this is still within the state right of way. Okay, that was the concern.
33 comes out of it, 65 total.
Okay, Israel, continue.
All right, so continuing to the north, so you can see we're keeping everything in front of the right of way, in front of the utility poles in this area. We will have a small area here where we need to go by a utility pole. Based on accessibility guidelines, we're allowed to go down to 3 feet minimum clearance for a short distance. So this will not be an issue. There are a few trees that are within the right of way that will need to be removed here. Trying to minimize any impact there. You see there is some parking that's going on slightly over the right of way line. We're trying to minimize those impacts as much as we can.
Israel, can you stop for a second? Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Can you come forward? I know it's a pain. It's really helpful for the people who are on the Zoom that everybody's coming up to the table.
I
So
have
thank
temporary
you.
glasses on, so I have a hard time.
Okay.
So we are 378 Vermont Route 15.
Yep.
We're Nellie Mae's tea shop. Has been for 25 years. I'm not open currently. So my question is, you had mentioned grandfathered in. So when we bought our house and I opened my business and looked into getting a designated, what would I have to do to designate parking in front of our home, in front of the business? I was told at that time that it was grandfathered in to that property because it originally was built as a business, a funeral home in 1860. And so a 3-car parking space is grandfathered in and has always been a part of our house. In my business, which we really needed it for. What's going to happen to that? Are we going to lose that parking area in front of our home that is grandfathered into the deed to the house, or how does that work?
So my understanding of the V-Trans right away is that there's no grandfathered in. You have a permit through section 1111, which is the V-Trans state access permit, or there's no, right? So do you know if your property is that what you're referring to when you say you have something in your deed?
When I opened my business and came to the town clerk and saying, do we have to get permission to have people park in front? And they said, you don't need permission. It's already there. And they showed me on record, you don't have to do anything because it's existing. It's an existing, whatever, 3-car parking space in front of that house that has been there since 1860. So,
Yeah.
so I guess my question is, will we lose that parking area in front of our home?
Yeah, and I can check with V-Trans access folks and see
Okay,
if they have anything on record for that. I mean,
Right.
generally, they don't allow parking inside the state right of way without these access agreements.
yeah,
But I'll look in, but if you're saying that's
that's
sounds
what
like it might already be in place.
right, yeah.
So
So-
if that's the case, we would we'd need to make an adjustment here to make that happen.
Right, okay, would be curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so continuing on, we are now out in front of 380. I don't know if that property owner is here, but based on access management guidelines, they typically want only one entrance per parcel. So this kind of has that entrance where it comes in, horseshoes around the utility pole. So we'd like to narrow that down unless there's a extreme objection. And then again, we can talk to section 1111 and see if we can get a variance on that drive. So yeah, if like I said, we can send out these plans and anybody that has any comments on that can discuss it. And in this area, we kind of start where the utility poles are a little closer to the road in this area. So we had to push the sidewalk back a little bit. So you can see we're increasing that green strip to get the utility poles out front. Doing the best we can to avoid any landscaping that people have constructed inside the state right of way, reconnecting all the existing walkways that are going out to the street. Those will now get connected to the sidewalk.
Israel, may I ask a question?
Sure.
What is the distance for 382 and 386 between the sidewalk and what looks like a front porch for all of those?
Oh, so from like here to here?
Yeah.
It's roughly 20 feet.
20 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's one, I think the one down here is probably the worst case. But yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. So we'll keep coming down through. So as you can see, fairly consistent green strip all the way through here. And then here's the end project.
Well, you went past 388.
388. Okay, so this one, generally not much for impact. Looks like a little bit of hedges that are inside the right of way will need to get potentially cut just to make that connection to the sidewalk with the existing walkway.
What do you mean, like shrubs? They're not hedges.
Can I set up front, please?
Sure.
Henry Listenik, I own 388 Vermont Route 15 at the moment. And what are you gonna do about the swale there? It's not flat. Have you walked the site?
I have walked the site.
Okay, did you notice there's a nice little 2 to 3 foot swale?
So there's swale that's going this direction.
It comes from Route 15, drops down. My driveway has a hill. So now you're gonna put a sidewalk right through my driveway, which is gonna come up, it's gonna lay flat, and now I'm gonna have a pitch to get up. The sidewalk is for safety, right? I'm concerned to my safety. Am I gonna be able to back out of my driveway? Because I do not have the luxury of turning around like some folks do in their driveway. I have to drive in and I have to back out on Route 15.
So DMV policy is not to back out onto roadways, it's to back into driveways and pull out onto roadways.
Have you ever tried to back in on Route 15 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
And he got arrested for doing it.
They're
By
arrested
a
for
sheriff.
backing into the driveway?
Yes.
Yes.
That's
He pulled up right behind me and says, keep going, you cannot back up in. And he, down the road, he pulled me over, gave me a written warning.
Okay. So you've got,
So I have some major concerns about this sidewalk and me for the safety of getting out of my driveway.
so your concern is related to the grade coming out of driveway?
Do you realize how close that sidewalk is gonna be to my house? It's gonna be closer than 13 feet. I measured it. And at the same token, I have a stone foundation. When they worked across the street, putting in that sidewalk, all the vibrations from the machinery and everything, my foundation caved in. I had to pocket out of my own money, 17 grand to replace the foundation.
Okay. Yeah,
So now who's gonna take responsibility when the rest of that foundation caves in?
so there is a policy or there's a special provision we can add to the contract where the contractors will actually go in, do a survey of the foundation prior to construction, photo document everything. Then after the construction is complete, they go back in and see if anything is shifted and moved.
Well,
And
what happens when it falls in?
well, if it falls in during construction, if it's, I think I would say if it was that close to falling in, I would suggest a structural survey.
It's a stone foundation. There's no mortar, there's no nothing. Back in the day, I don't know, this is way before our time, but from what I understand, they made a stone foundation and then they put it up on a brick foundation.
Yeah, so I guess, in my experience with sidewalk construction is they're fairly small vibratory compactors that you can feel for a few feet away from this. So it's like a large 18-wheeler going down Route 15 is
It
making.
rattles my house when an 18-wheeler goes down. When MBI goes by, my house rattles.
And your foundation collapses.
It hasn't collapsed. Well, the only time it collapsed is when they were working across the street, doing the other foundation.
So
When MBI goes by at 35 miles an hour, my house vibrates like you wouldn't believe.
Okay.
So I have major concerns about the structural integrity of my house because of all the heavy duty machinery that is gonna be going through. And literally, you'll be 13 feet from the edge of the sidewalk to my house.
All right, yeah, we can potentially look at pulling that green strip in there and.
You won't be able to because of the telephone poles that are right between Pete Mitchell's and mine.
And we can, so this pole's the one you're concerned about?
The pole, yes, between Pete Mitchell's and mine is literally probably 3 feet from the edge of the road now, 3 to 4 feet from the edge of the road. Pete, am I right? 3 to 4 feet approximately from the edge of the road? It's very close.
Okay,
And like I say, if you think you're gonna regrade and push more dirt against the foundation of my house.
No,
gonna
that's
happen.
not what we're suggesting here. I mean, as you can see on this plan, like.
But if you look, you'll see there's probably a 2 to 3 foot swale from Route 15 to where it finally flattens out 13 feet from my house.
And we're down.
Yeah, this, like I was talking to Joe earlier, these are the ones where it's actually a downgrade in.
So that is my major concern with what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're next, Pete.
All right, Pete, are you up? So here's 390. As we previously discussed, staying behind the utility pole here, connecting the existing walkway. Not much changing with the drive. Looks like we're keeping the same width there.
Sure. Please.
Peter Mitchell, I live at 390. I'm wondering why the sidewalk does not appear to be parallel to the edge of the road. And there is some water infrastructure on the east side of this road. The submain crosses Route 15.
Yeah. Yep.
And services 388 and 392.
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely service, water service. The main is on the west side, but there's water services crossing for sure.
Doesn't just cross the road. There's a sub-main on this side.
Yeah, we don't expect to be out of depth with sidewalk construction to be disturbing any water infrastructure. Typically, we're going to be 18 inches or less of excavation depth. And then water is generally installed at least 6 feet deep, so not likely to be any impact there.
Did you answer why the sidewalk is not parallel to the edge of the road then?
Oh, yeah, so we did talk about that early on, is that we do have some meander in the green strip just to avoid utility poles.
Oh.
Because relocation of all these utility poles behind the sidewalk would have had some pretty major property impacts as far as tree clearing and utility easements.
Why don't you move the utility poles?
If we move those back
and maintain the integrity of the sidewalk.
If we move the utility poles back, we're going to need a massive amount of clearing. And there's a couple of properties where they're actually so close that the the utility lines, would be almost on the building. So mainly, they don't like to put in new utilities unless they have 25-foot easements. Right, so if we move these poles all to the right-of-way line, and then we would need to get public utility easements that would encompass pretty much the entirety of all the front lawns along this. So that's why we're doing our best not to impact any utilities or aerial utilities.
So in the area of Jericho Market, there's street lighting.
Yes.
Somehow tries to give you the impression that you're in a village.
Mhm.
Are you showing some sort of enhanced lighting along this section of Route 15 that might make it feel more like a village and maybe help control the traffic?
So there are existing lighting on the utility poles. There's the Cobra head type fixtures on those utility poles. Generally speaking, we weren't adding much for lighting. There's gas line that essentially runs in this green strip. So installation of lighting in the green strip would require relocation of the gas. And then again, the utility poles would all be within the clear zone of the roadway. So V-Trans doesn't typically like to have new obstructions in the clear zone because of the potential for.
So you have special lighting here in Jericho Corners.
Yeah.
You have special lighting at Jericho Market. What's wrong with special lighting at the end of this stretch?
Really, but
It's just more where it can be located. So in those areas, like when we get, like, let me go to the other side of Jericho. You can see on this end, we have really wide green strips in this area. So there's room to put those special lighting, those special post top lights in. As we get into this section, due to the proximity of the structures to the roadway, we didn't feel that we wanted to push the green strip that wide in order to get additional lighting in. It would have required property takings for every property along this roadway. And I guess we didn't feel that would be palatable to the property owners to have.
How about in the vicinity of where the crossing is?
In the vicinity of.
Where Park Street is?
Yeah, the Park
the other
Street
end?
crossing. Is there going to be a crossing similar to the one at Jolly's and similar to the one in front of Jericho Market?
Yes, that's the intent. And we get a rectangular rapid flashing beacon where it's a push button that flashes the beacon.
So in that area, there could be lighting. It's consistent with the rest of Jericho.
We could look at potentially adding lighting to that area.
Does seem some sort of almost like a gateway treatment.
Yep.
If lighting along the whole pathway isn't possible, at least when you're entering and exiting this segment to cue drivers, pedestrians will be here. So are you adding pedestrian signage also, like crossing markers and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so that's what this is showing is there's
Okay.
existing pedestrian crossing signage. What we're doing is upgrading it to a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which you push a button and that makes the beacon below the sign flash to kind of let drivers know that there's a pedestrian waiting to cross at that location.
Sabina says Stacy on the Zoom has a question. Yes? Stacy, you can unmute and ask your question. Says you're talking, but we can't hear you.
so I don't know, she's just having difficulty.
Stacy, we'll come back to you. We can see the Zoom says you're talking, but we actually can't hear anything.
Did she put it in the chat? I thought I saw that she had something in the chat.
Well, what was in the chat was, I would like to say something.
There you go.
So going back to those light poles at the Jericho Market, they look like a decorative pole. They're like a 14 feet or 16 feet high. They're not like a really tall. Do
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
is that V-Trans installed those or is that part of any other development?
There was, the town had a grant for like installing historically correct lighting in the village centers.
Mhm.
And so that they've been installed in Jericho corners and like they were saying by the market.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So is
who-
that-
I think V-Trans, I don't know. I don't know who
I
installed
mean,
it.
it's in the V-Trans right of way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We could probably pull.
Yeah, we-
future purchases on that.
Unfortunately, what we've also discovered is that if they're damaged or broken, huge supply chain problems in getting them replaced.
okay.
There's one missing down near the L&B.
Mhm.
I think we're still a year out from actually having it delivered.
Right. I mean, as far as I know, mostly V-Trans does not install those decorative poles in the state right of way. But they might probably approve it for other developments, like, and they get the permit to install those decorative poles,
Mhm.
but usually V-Trans does not install those poles
Yeah.
in their state of, in their right of way.
So we'll find out how we
Yeah.
got the other stuff done.
Right, yeah,
And who did it and how
Gotcha.
we paid for it.
sure.
But maybe the message to you guys is also that a sense of that, the concept of the gateway, the sense of safety, the sense of aesthetic appeal, you're entering a village area, and maybe there's other ways that we could accomplish a similar messaging to drivers, especially, and also to people who are in the area so they can enjoy it more.
Great, thanks. Yeah, we'll look into that. Any other comments or questions?
So you're through.
We're through. Yeah, we'll go back to the.
And how close are we to the 392 and 394?
Yeah.
Well, those look awfully tight.
Right on their front door.
Literally on their porch.
Yeah. Those poor kids has got that place.
Which one's that? The last two right at the end? Yeah.
Just right after Green Thumb.
Yeah, that was the one they actually have existing like stone sidewalk that's out there, so we were kind of putting it back in that same location. We did consider potentially moving this one closer to the road too. I'd definitely like to hear from those property owners and see what their thoughts are. Yeah, that one's an interesting one because the front of the building is actually, based on our survey, was within the right of way. So yeah, that's our thoughts for now.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, how are you? Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Dion, Dion. I don't live on this stretch, but I run here every day on the other side of the road. And I just want to say, as someone who samples the sidewalks in Jericho and Underhill on an almost daily basis, that it's going to be really important to think about ice and water and how that water is going to drain off the sidewalk. So the sidewalks, sorry, I can't breathe. The sidewalks in Underhill and Jericho often seem to be, even the brand new one, and I'm not trying to be in any way negative towards sidewalks because I really appreciate them. They collect water and there are a lot of puddles that turn into sheets of ice, and then you end up having to run in the road because you can't run on the sidewalks because your socks, your feet freeze. So as you're installing this, it sounds like even though from a bird's eye view, it looks kind of flat, there is going to be some challenges. And I guess my point is, think about water if you walk the rest of this block. Like what you're doing here is creating a block if you include Dickinson Street, where, I imagine like middle school runners could run that loop and that would be really fun or something like that. But if it's full of puddles and sheets of ice, it's not gonna work. So that's just my, as a throwing that out to the engineers, that it either needs to be higher or at a slant, or low spots need to be drained intentionally or something. Thanks.
Yeah, so ideally we keep the cross slopes of all the sidewalks at a 2% or less grade. So that helps keep the drainage flowing off the sidewalk. Occasionally over the years, you get the salt and the sand buildup. That'll create a small berm and it starts to trap water.
If you have any time to like walk the sidewalk, I mean, you probably don't have to go very far, but there are patches of 30 feet of glazed water, like on the corner of Park Street and River Road. It's that whole corner, you'll just crash through into 2 inches of water. And there are various other spots that are just notorious for having lots of standing water. So it's something that I don't know if you can look at the sidewalks that are already there and say, oh, if we make the same thing here, that same thing's gonna happen. Right in front of the fire station, between the fire station and Underhill Stylists, there's just a huge pool of water there.
Yeah, we'll take another look through our grading and make sure that we have reasonable pathways for the water to get off the sidewalk. Back into the presentation. Oh, and of course my computer just dies, but the last slide, all that was.
Perfect timing.
Last slide was just,
I could probably pull it up.
no, I mean, it's just the next slide is just for next steps, and all it says is, so we're at conceptual plans, we're still waiting for approval on our NEPA documentation, which that's the National Environmental Protection Act. In which what that requires is that for any federally funded project or any projects getting any money from the feds whatsoever, we have to look at all natural and cultural resources. So as part of those cultural resources, we have to look at archaeological and historic properties. So we have a sub-consultant on board to take a look at the structures within the project area and see if they're eligible for National Register of Historic Places. Based on that, there is not likely for as little impact as a sidewalk project has on the facade or anything like that of the building. There's unlikely to be any mitigation, but that's kind of the last step we need to go through to get our NEPA clearance, and then we would move into preliminary plans. At preliminary plans, we need to nail down all the construction impacts. We need to make sure we know exactly where the line of the sidewalks can go. So we're going to take our discussion from today, adjust the layout as much as we can to make everybody or to make your concerns addressed. Then we'll take that. Once we have V-Trans approval on those preliminary plans, we would do any permitting necessary and any right-of-way necessary. We're not expecting to need any easements based on our current impacts. So there would be no right-of-way process, which is really helpful because that process typically takes a long time. After that, we would go into contract plans and bidding. So the plans can be made available at each milestone going forward for people to view, but there's no more public meetings scheduled based on the V-Trans process.
There was just a question from the Zoom.
Sure.
Who's responsible for clearing the sidewalks of snow and ice? Is it the town or?
Yeah, typically the town will have a contract or a maintenance agreement with the state, which means you're putting your sidewalk inside state right of way, but the town has to maintain it.
If all goes smoothly, when does construction start?
This is going to depend a lot on V-Trans. A lot of it depends on their funding obligation. We should be able to have the plans ready, assuming everything goes as I just stated, and NEPA goes smoothly and they don't throw up any big barriers for us. We would be ready to go for next summer, as long as the funding is there.
So summer 2025.
Yeah.
Can I just ask the name of the historical person that you have to go through?
So the person that we're working for, the person that requested it at the state, her name is Judith Ehrlich. And she's the State Historic Preservation Officer, or no, what's her title? She's, or like EHRILICH. And she is the V-Trans Historic, I forget her exact title, but she handles historic things for V-Trans. The sub-consultant we're using that's doing the evaluation is Harkin Archaeological. And they also did the archaeological assessments of the area as well.
Peter, you have a question? Come forward.
Is this basically done?
Um,
I have one last question. I don't want to get in the middle of the presentation though.
Presentation stuff.
Okay. Hypothetically speaking, what if one of the property owners had a fence that went out to the edge of the road in this strip of land? What would happen to that? Would they be told you have to take it down? You're in the right of way. You're in the right of way.
Yeah, so generally anything that's inside the right of way that's getting impacted, there would be, there'd be a notice saying, hey, you can take it down, or the contractors, when they come out, will take it down. If it's within the public right of way, but is not impacted, typically what happens is you'll get a notice that says, hey, it's within the public right of way, but we don't need to impact it. So just as long as you're aware that it's in the public right of way.
Okay.
But yeah, if it's there and not impacted, it can stay.
And would you make an effort to go around it the way you went around telephone poles, or not as much? Because that's not it's not the same scope of effort
Yeah.
it takes to move telephone poles.
Yeah, generally unless it was like a historic feature,
Yeah.
like that's kind of what we're talking about. Whereas like if the historic people say, hey, that fence has been there since, 50 years ago, and it adds to the historic character of this building.
So 50 years, you just said? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I don't know what the date is, because
Thank
I'm
you.
not a historic expert, but there is a date. Yeah.
Another question from online, question about burying the utility lines and whether that's an option.
Burying, so burying utility mains like that, so the 3-phase is extremely expensive. So it's typically only done as a last resort. If we really had no other options, we would explore that, but just that work alone for that 1,600 feet would be more than the grant that we currently have.
okay, any other questions online? So we're gonna read the chat out loud just because so that everyone can see what the questions are. All right, so we already asked about burying the line, and we already asked about plowing the sidewalk. But it would be better if you would just unmute and ask your question if you can. Okay, any other questions in the room? So I'll say I met Cy, I don't know, 2 years ago, and he said it'll probably take 3 years. And I was like, 3 years to build a sidewalk? That's ridiculous. Why does it have to take 3 years? What can we do to make it go faster? And he said, well, there's really not that much you can do to make it go faster, because we have all of these careful, diligent processes, funding, V-Trans, everything. And I was like, I'm gonna prove Jericho can make a sidewalk faster than anybody else. And you said, oh, you were game. You were like, okay.
I'm in game.
But I have to say that I've learned a lot, and
Yeah.
they have been very diligent and great to work with. And it's really great that you guys have asked all your questions and come forward to help make the design as good as it can be. So thank you very much. And Israel, thank you for your work on the detailed design. Now that we have a question.
Hi,
Okay.
there was a part of Stacy's question that was missed. That's also a concern of mine. And she wrote, the lighted crosswalk in front of the market has been out of commission for many months. How would these instances be addressed to ensure safety?
Well, the pole that was taken down by the car.
Yeah.
I believe that's been delivered and will be installed when the road crew is able to. They got a chipper that they're using now to get wood out of the road, which is creating hazard for trucks traveling through town.
So basically the town is responsible for repairing pedestrian
Replacing it.
infrastructure
Or
as part of like the network that we're trying to build out. It's the town's responsibility. Ultimately, the highway department does the work.
correct.
Not as fast as anybody would like, but as fast as they possibly can. Sounds like the answer, right? Okay, I think we have to move on.
Thank you.
Good to go? Thank you. You're
Thank you,
welcome
everyone.
to stay.
Should I make one comment?
Yes.
Peterman, so you talked about this taking 3 years. This issue of having a sidewalk goes back at least to the 1990s. The first design that I'm aware of was done in 2002 by O'Leary and Burke. There was another design that I'm aware of done in 2009, I think by Lamoureux and Dickinson. And so this is basically a 30-year project. And I'm very glad we're moving ahead. So I don't know if everybody is, but I am.
Thank you. Thank you. So you're welcome to stay. The planning commission meeting is going to continue. But you're also welcome to leave. We won't take it personally if you decide to go. Same thing with people online, and you guys can stay or you can go.
So
Probably.
there's other sidewalk project you're gonna talk about, right?
Yes.
So is that something CCRPC project or
Yes, we're working with, I'm blanking on her name.
Christine?
Christine.
Oh, Christine Ford. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I can stay. I'm interested.
You're welcome to stay to hear about that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Israel.
Yeah.
Thanks, Israel.
Yep.
Thank you, Israel.
Okay. Can we put, can we show the screen so we can see Heidi and Sarah? Just so that I can orient myself now back to like our regular meeting. Just,
Gallery view,
Can I get that view?
gallery view should.
Oh, there's,
there's Heidi.
I'm clicking gallery, but it's only showing
yeah, it's weird.
these 4 people.
Okay, all right, I'll just adjust.
Yes, I
All right, so the next topic on the planning commission agenda is to discuss the path from the corners to Riverside. So just to kind of level set this, where unlike the project we just talked about, which is well along and has funding and has a construction hopeful timetable. This other project, also probably a 30-year project that people have looked at and put on the shelf and looked at and put on the shelf, I guess, to do some good PR for the planning commission. We don't want to just put stuff on the shelf. So we're agitating and trying to really like move the ball down the field. This particular project was actually reinitiated by the select board, not by the planning commission, but we inserted ourselves because we wanted to learn about it. We wanted to try to influence it if we could. We wanted it to actually happen. And so this project is basically to create a connection from the sidewalk that goes from the Jericho Elementary School, currently goes to Griswold. And then there's nothing all the way until you get to like Mills Riverside Park. There's this big gap. And my understanding is that for 30 years, everyone has said, why don't we use the railroad bed? Wouldn't it be great if you could get from the corners to Riverside? And several studies have been done, and I have more of an appreciation now for studies as well, because they do surface a lot of issues, pros and cons, and you're talking about millions of dollars, and you want to make careful, responsible decisions. So there was a prior study that was done, probably several, that looked at a few alternatives of reviving the railroad bed or developing a sidewalk along Route 15. And a couple of, what was the date? 2017, I think. The select board decided that the path down on the railroad bed was expensive, complicated, had wetland impacts, and that a sidewalk along Route 15 was the preferred alternative on the south side of Route 15, which would basically be going from Griswold to the Mills Riverside Park on the side of the road where Packard is, Jericho East, because they're, for a whole variety of reasons, they looked at, you know, all these different criteria. And that project then was applied for grants, because generally most of these projects for sidewalks are considered transportation projects. The town doesn't pay the lion's share of the cost. As taxpayers, we pay, but it gets paid through federal grants and state grants. The town applied twice and was rejected twice for funding of portions of this south side of Route 15 sidewalk. So this planning commission started rattling around. We were like, well, we're not going to take no for an answer. We really need this connection. I'm kind of exaggerating to try to make the meeting a little less boring, but we were like, this needs to be resurfaced. The select board decided to resurface the project, and they hired, I think, a different consultant.
No, it's Stantec as well.
Different than the previous consultant. I think the previous was a different firm.
Okay, yes.
Decided, since Stantec now had been engaged on other projects for us, so the town, the select board, engaged Stantec to take a fresh look at a connection. Don't throw away all the old work, but don't be hamstrung by the old work. Don't have a lack of imagination based on what previous studies had shown, but don't reinvent the wheel. Take all the work, update it, and use fresh eyes. And the town has just received the report from Stantec. And this is the first time the planning commission has gotten to look at it and has gotten to talk about it. We are only talking about it so that because we wanted to deliver potentially a formal opinion to the select board. The select board is actually the recipient of the report. The select board is the decision maker, and the select board has it on their agenda on February 15th to review this proposal. So we are just kind of being busybodies a little bit and saying, we are the planning commission. We're supposed to be looking at the big picture. We just worked on the town plan. We just talked to hundreds of residents about their priorities. We'd like to take a look at this report and deliver our 2 cents. So that's the discussion that the planning commission is about to basically have.
Right, and also generate potentially a list of questions, if there are any to ask. So at the February 15th meeting with the select board, it will be similar to like what we did here tonight. There'll be the Stantec engineer doing a presentation to the select board, explaining everything that's in this report, the different alternatives that were considered, and they will be providing their recommendation for what they think the preferred alternative should be.
Okay. This report that we just received is also now on the town website.
Yes.
And there's a project page called Riverside to Corners Connection Project or something like that.
Connecting Jericho Corners to Riverside.
And if you're interested, it gives you the whole history, and it also gives you this most recent report. So do you want to tee up the discussion of the 3 alternatives?
Well, I thought what we would do, so I have the report here, I can share my screen. I thought we'd look at the table.
Yeah, I printed that out, page 43.
Yeah, which is the, I guess it'd be considered the analysis of the 3 alternatives. Comparison of the 3 alternatives. So sorry that I'm scrolling.
We call it evaluation matrix.
Evaluation
Yeah.
Matrix, yeah.
Not to make too big a plug for the planning commission, but we have been advocating for this for at least as long as you and I have been on the planning commission. So I'd like to think that somehow our bringing it up and having heard it from the community over and over again about we want bike ped connectivity is leading to this movement finally after 15 years.
Except that we never are.
Not to pat ourselves on the.
Yes.
too-
Sorry. Is that, can people see?
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, that's good.
Is that big enough? But trying to get it centered to. Is that big enough?
It's readable from here.
I mean, you could see the greens and the reds, which is kind of helpful.
Here's your maybe one more. Yeah, that's still okay, okay. Well, actually, there's 4 alternatives because there's a no build.
True.
$0 option.
There's
Right.
the do nothing alternative. So yeah, this is the evaluation matrix and it goes through each of the alternatives and basically attempts to, you know, rank them according to impacts and criteria of whether it meets the purpose and need of the project. So I'll describe each of the alternatives as best I can. So there's the no build, which is the do nothing. Alternative 1, the Route 15 alignment, and this would be the path going all the way down the side of Route 15, starting at where the current sidewalk ends at the intersection of Route 15 and Griswold, and going all the way to the Mills Riverside Park, and it would be a 10-foot wide shared use path. The alternative 2 would be using the old railroad bed starting at Silly Hill Road and then going to Raceway Road and then having the Raceway Road have a bike and pedestrian signage on it going into Riverside. Then there's the hybrid alternative 3, which is sort of a combination of the previous 2. So instead of a 10-foot wide shared use path, it would be a sidewalk from Griswold going to Packard Road. And then having a crosswalk across Route 15 and having bike and pedestrian signage to share the road on Raceway Road going to Riverside. Is that clear? Yep. Okay. So the first item here, criteria, is the cost. So you can see, you know, there's quite a bit of variance in the cost of the path, 10-foot wide shared use path on Route 15. These are just conceptual rough estimates, but the estimate for that is $2.8 million. The alternative 2, using the old railroad bed going to Raceway Road, is $2.3 million. The hybrid alternative of a sidewalk from Griswold to Packard and then shared use on the road to Riverside on Raceway is $1.265 million. So they're all significant financial investments. This next grouping on the evaluation matrix talks about how well each option addresses the purpose and need of the project. So providing a safe and comfortable pedestrian and bike connection, if we do nothing, it's a no, there's no improvement there. And then for each alternative, the Route 15 alignment gets a rating of good. The cross-country path and Raceway is better, and the hybrid option is best. Facilitating use by all ages, experience levels, and trip purpose. The no build has no benefit. And again, it's good, and better for the 3 different alternatives. And whether or not each option adds to the town and regional bike and pedestrian network, again, nothing for the no build and yes to any of the 3 alternatives. You have a
Linda,
question?
before you move on, can I ask a question or do you want me to hold?
Yes, you can. Sorry, I didn't see that you had a hand.
Oh, I know you have too much going on. I know it's hard when someone's online. Thank you. I just wonder if you could just go back up just a little bit. I was confused for a moment about the second rating that the alternative number 3, the hybrid.
Yep.
Actually, it was the first rating that it was the best for safe, comfortable pedestrian and bike connection. can you give a little more information about that? Because I thought I heard you say that in order to use this, people are going to have to cross over Route 15. And so is that, there's going to be a way to do that safely? That seemed contradictory to me.
Well, there would be a crosswalk. So I guess I can't speak to it really in detail, the consultant, that'd be maybe a good question to write down for the consultant next week.
Yeah, that would be helpful just because
But the planning commission, every planning commission person might not be there. So I think we should we should collect up the planning commission questions and assemble it that we can submit to them.
Yeah.
Is that okay? We could do it from the minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
My question builds on that for number 3. And I think in the recommendations, they talked about if they decide to pave the road or not, so that was actually a choice. And so how does that affect the best, like this description of best in terms of safe, comfortable conditions for bike ped if it doesn't get paved? Like,
Yeah,
because it wouldn't be safe or comfortable.
Well, a lot of people currently walk and bike on Raceway in the current state. I think was the thinking.
Right.
True, but like,
Is it safe or comfortable?
If you're on a hybrid bike, it's fine.
it also seems like the second one is kind of about all users and inclusivity and gravel. You know, if you're in a wheelchair or if you have a walker,
Yeah.
gravel's not great.
Anyway, I'm just.
So I guess we have questions about whether or not, like, is it really the best?
Yeah.
Or,
Well,
yeah,
isn't the difference in alt 2 and alt 3 is the cross-country path, which is the old rail bed, both of them still use Raceway. So if Raceway is a problem in one, it's a problem in the other.
Right.
And the better, I believe, comes because you have more crossings you have to do to get from Griswold down to Silly Hill, across Silly Hill and over and through.
Right.
well, it'd be a Packard, not Griswold, but anyway,
Yeah.
so your point.
No,
Stan.
alt 3 is Packard, alt 2 is going across from
Right.
Griswold to Silly Hill.
Yeah, you would
To
have.
the
Oh,
old rail
right.
bed.
But either way, it's crossing 15.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The disadvantage of alt 3 is you're crossing 15 with the speed limit, it's jumping up to 50. Alt 2, you're doing it here, where it's 35.
Yeah.
Is it 50 or 40? Because I think,
It's right around Raceway where it bumps up to 50.
well, because, yeah, I think the crossing at Raceway and Packard is still 40. We can look.
I think it's still. Tell that to the people who drive on it.
And also.
I live there.
What, do they talk about, if the paving is the option, are there recommendations from, I know they talk about traffic calming, but are they giving specific recommendations for what would be the best traffic calming for that, application? And if not, could they give us that?
Yeah, that's probably outside of the scope of what they did here, but you
Right,
can ask that.
right.
okay.
And I have actually not, well, I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but I just might as well say it for the record. Is if it comes down to not wanting to pave, Raceway, I would offer a hybrid, which would be paving the end of Raceway. So from Valley's Edge to Route 15. As like a hybrid for that, because then the people from Jericho will have a safer way to get out from their facility, right? Which right now is very difficult on foot. So, and then there's another.
Yeah, I think the conversation around to pave or not to pave.
Right, that's a separate thing.
It's separate.
Right.
Yeah.
Separate.
But when is that gonna, is there a plan? They have that discussion?
That's a good question for the select board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good answer. I thought it was happening now daily on Front Porch Forum.
Yeah.
Okay, Linda, keep.
Well,
What?
there is a question, I don't know if you want to take it now or later, but I just want to.
Sure.
So Colleen, go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure on that list of questions that it included when you're talking about paving or not paving, because it's my understanding that it's option number 3 is so cheap because we're not paving. And also I really would like them to explain to the select board the third option is the best at providing a safe and comfortable. I mean, the town can't even fix the light at the end of the road. And as everybody's probably been reading Front Porch Forum, the road is just never taken care of or not taken care of properly. I don't know how, if you're going to invite bikers and invite, so like somebody said before, people were already walking and biking on Raceway Road. I hardly ever see a biker on there because it's it's rocks and divots. And so really, they should explain how that's best. I just don't understand how you could possibly say that.
So does the construction cost for alternative 3 assume is not including paving, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
paving.
Right,
Is alternative 2 including paving?
no.
Not a Raceway Road.
Paving of Raceway involved any of this?
No, so
Alternative True does include a raised walkway across some of the marshy lands that are on the old railroad track. And
But no paving of Raceway.
no.
No, and the railroad bed would also not be paved, it would just remain gravel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, paving.
Hi there, can I raise my hand?
Sure.
Yes.
Hi, this is Stacy Georgic. I've been trying to get through. Seems like there's technical difficulty, but I have a few questions. So I heard earlier that, you know, this is an opportunity to be really creative and not just do the standard pro quo. So why don't we take that opportunity not to just pass something through and just have either a bike path or whatever? The reality is this road is a very highly traveled road. There are a lot of people that live on this road that travel it, but there's also a lot of people that use it as a cut through. There's also a lot of people that come here to exercise, whether it is to walk, ride a bike with their kids, whatnot, and it hasn't been safe for a real long period of time. So I'm very for having it be an access for everybody to enjoy, but I think we have to do it with a manner that's extremely responsible. And then just to piggyback from what I heard, you know, with the stoplight at the end of the road, that has been out of commission for about 5 months now. That is an extreme atrocity. There are a lot of people that try to go cross the street from Raceway to go, whether they're walking to the park or to the store. That's just not a safe environment. So I think as a whole, you know, I've heard a lot of things on Front Porch Forum. These are roads. We need to drive them. We need to travel them. But I also think we need to do it with some responsibility. And I understand we want to grow our town to be able to have more federal dollars and be more excitable for people to come. But I think we have to do it in a manner that's responsible. So I guess I would like to hear a lot more creative thought than just have these standardized surveys that are done that are just kind of like this stuff that's plopped in the middle of the road and then we all are trying to address it. I don't know whether paving the road is right for Raceway. I have feelings on both, but I do know that it's really just not a safe road at this point. And then to add extra traffic on there, whether it's from, you know, an exercising aspect or from more road traffic, it's not going to be a happy mix.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so if we move into the next section of this matrix, looking at the impacts. So for the no build option, no change to safety. They're saying all three of the options will be better than existing conditions for bikes and pedestrians. Right-of-way impacts, there's also a lot of variety here. None for doing nothing. But permanent and temporary easements for about 50 properties for alternative 1 on Route 15. Permanent easements on 6 properties for the alternative 2 using the railroad bed and raceway, and permanent and temporary easements for 29 properties for the hybrid option. Environmental impacts, the most significant impact would be for the railroad bed option where there's wetlands. But there also would be wetland impacts on the Route 15 alternative 1. Cultural resource impacts, similar for all 3. Winter maintenance, the best, it looks like the one that would have the least impact for snow maintenance would be alternative 2. Utilities and drainage, they all have kind of similar impacts, with alternative 1 also requiring utility coordination. So that, is similar to what we heard from Israel tonight about moving, potentially relocating overhead utilities. Floodplain impacts, potential minor impacts for the Route 15 option, which would be just near Mills Riverside Park at the bridge. Significant impacts from the path on the railroad bed option, because part of the path goes through floodplain, right where the path goes near Raceway Road, but no impacts for the hybrid options. And then stormwater impacts, similar for all 3. So that's how the consultant evaluated the different options.
So Heidi and Sarah, Eric, Sabina, do you guys have any specific questions or comments on this matrix for Linda at this point?
Nothing.
I do not have any specific questions or comments.
So we do know what the consultant recommended,
Yeah. I can go
right?
to
So
that.
it's just like the big reveal.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question about the chart? I'm a
Yeah.
little unclear if you want to ask a question, you want us to just be quiet and listen and ask the select board. I'm okay with either answer.
I'm trying to get to a certain point, so can
Okay,
you just
great.
give me a
Yeah,
couple of minutes?
Fine.
I'll give you a chance, and I see somebody has their hand raised also. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get the planning commission to a certain point.
For sure.
All right, well, this is kind of small writing, but the consultant's recommendation is the hybrid alternative, so that's alternative 3. Having a sidewalk on Route 15 from Griswold to Packard, and then a crosswalk onto the Raceway Road.
Basically, lower cost, delivers the same, or according to that matrix, better benefits. And uses existing infrastructure of Raceway Road, albeit definitely a failure point. But with the assumption that that's a functional piece of infrastructure. And so everybody had this report ahead of this meeting. Did any planning commission person have major problems with what the consultant recommended?
I would want to get a good sense on the right-of-way acquisition that might be necessary for the homeowners along Route 15. But to me, that is the better alternative, the hybrid alternative.
And they did give a chart where they showed the properties, and it looked like the 29
Yeah.
of option 3 are the same subset of the 50 in option 1. They're like basically the same, or almost the same.
Most of those houses from Griswold to Packard on the far side of the road, as we're looking at it here, I believe are all far enough back that this wouldn't really impinge on much of their properties.
So if we, do you think you have enough information that you would want to submit an opinion on this report to the select board? which I would frame in terms of a motion, but I don't want to bother doing that if people don't feel like they want to do that.
Heidi has her hand up.
Heidi?
Yeah, thanks. I have a question or just an observation, maybe. And that is the old adage of an assumption that build it and they will come. Right. And I think one of the pieces that I'm not seeing in the matrix, and it was clearly not what was required of the consultant, but is where are people more likely to use it? Right. So if we're going to make a big investment as a community, I completely agree with the idea of creating safety for bike and ped connection. I also know that we are all human beings, and human beings tend to go to what's most expedient and easy, even over what is safe. Right. And so we watch patterns of human behavior and the way that people don't use sidewalks that are built, and they're going to take a cut through if they can. Right. And so I just feel like there's an important way for us to look at this from a perspective of a potential user and decisions that the human being is going to make as a factor. So I don't know how it connects with this assessment, but I just feel like it's important to name.
So in the report, you're right, Heidi, I agree with you. In the report talked about where all the residences are, the highest number of residences, and where the destinations are. And it did kind of talk about that use success, so to speak, but it didn't exactly compare them, like which one, is more likely. It did say though that the majority of the users or the majority of the homes are located between Griswold and Packard, Jericho East access. So that would get the largest number of people going to the destinations of either the school, the library, the park. But we could ask if they could add an assessment of that. Maybe they would all be the same. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand what you're saying. Like, we know this, the healthy way, the easy way, the easy way is the way you want it to be. There's whatever that expression is.
And can I piggyback on that again? I think it also has to be.
Hold on one second. I'm trying to just stay with planning commission comments just for another couple of minutes.
I was gonna say another way you could think about the hybrid option is if the sidewalk is extended from Griswold going up to Packard, the primary network is going to be connection to this part of town. So it extends the connection between Jericho Corners all the way up to Packard Road for all of those residents.
So you basically now have a functional sidewalk to the elementary school.
Correct.
For all of those houses, all those neighborhoods off of Packard,
Correct.
Griswold.
And
Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful.
It used to be when I would ride bicycles with my daughter, we had to go through the town forest through Griswold to get there because we couldn't ride on Route 15 with the 8-year-old. This would alleviate that for anybody on Packard, anybody in Griswold, anybody in Starboard, Ironhurst, all of those neighborhoods.
Right.
And there's a lot of kids in those neighborhoods.
I guess I just still feel like there's a big question mark on the paving versus not paving and how they're gonna look and how are we gonna protect people if it is.
For
Raceway.
Raceway.
Yes.
So I feel like it's incomplete. I feel like I like it.
Right.
But I feel like there's a big missing piece.
Do you think, but I guess what the consultant kind of concluded is that whether you pave or not, this is still a viable alternative. So do you, in your mind, are you not in favor of this alternative with or without?
No, I like this alternative, but I still think
But is
I want-
paving required in your mind for this alternative to work?
I wanna see what it looks like in both instances so that I can have a better sense.
But does that allow you to discard alternative 1 and 2?
I want number 3,
Okay,
but I want it to be better in terms of how it's described and how, from reassurance.
So if there was a
Yeah, I mean-
contract in there that said if they pave Raceway, there has to be a set aside sidewalk for bicyclists or
But there
pedestrians.
isn't gonna be,
No,
but it's not wide enough. From what I
I think-
understand.
I think we have to
Yeah.
remind ourselves where we're at.
Our
We're at-
goal is to say, do we want to recommend one over the other?
Yes.
And I would say yes to 3. I'm
Sure.
comfortable with it, but
But we have some caveats around it. Okay,
Yeah.
so Sarah and Heidi, did you have any objections to having an opinion? Having the planning commission submit an opinion to the select board?
I have no objections.
And are you?
I mean, there's
agree
nothing
with-
on this that really is a big surprise to me. I agree with a lot of the things that Sabina said. I do have concerns. I do have concerns about general maintenance. And some of that was even brought up in the sidewalk that's currently in Riverside, right? And like, it's one thing to build something, it's another thing to actually maintain it. And I think that brings up a really important point that we shouldn't lose sight of in the future, which is like, I think a great space for the evolution of the Trails Committee is to monitor some of those multi-use paths and report back, because I'm not sure that that's being done, right? So this isn't a one and done project is also what I'm hearing, which I think is important.
Okay. Okay, so now I think we could allow a few minutes for some public comment and questions. And then I think we'll be ready to wrap it with a motion. Peter, I think you were next.
Yeah, I had two thoughts. One was a similar question to Eric's question about the 50 properties, 6 properties, 29 properties. Does that mean that you're going to be needing to ask those people for easements on their property?
Yes, but there's 2 kinds. There's some of the properties are permanent easements.
Yep.
And some of the properties are temporary, meaning
For the
we all,
construction
yeah,
time?
we just need access
For
for
like 2
construction.
months or whatever.
Yeah.
The other, I don't know who said it, maybe it was Linda, maybe it was a woman online, the idea of building it and people not using it.
Heidi,
In
yeah.
thinking about that, it really struck me that I'm not sure that if I was at the elementary school and I was like, oh, my kid has a game at the soccer down at the Mills River, that I would think, oh, we can ride our bikes down to Packard safely, and then we're gonna cross 15 and go down Raceway. I don't think I would make that connection. Whereas if I woke up one morning and that path was down 15 all the way down with that 10-foot wide strip, I'd be like, oh, I would immediately think, oh, I can now get from the elementary school safely to Mills River. Whereas I think that the perception would be that, oh, I can get to Packard, and then I guess I can go to Raceway, which is kind of a shit show, kind of a mess. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the idea of like, oh, we're connecting our communities really clearly. I know it's the most expensive and hasn't really been talked about much, but like that clear path from like, here's Jericho Corners, here's Riverside, here's a straight shot. If we're now, that's now in people's minds, I can easily safely get from that point A to that point B and all the neighborhoods in between. So when I guess it was Heidi who said that, it really struck me like, oh, the Raceway feels like sort of a janky stapled together, like, oh, we could do this and call that good, but I'm sad.
Right.
Thank you.
You should also read the report because there is a lot of nuance and some reservations around that south side option that this is just a high level summary. The report's like 50 pages.
Yeah, I skimmed a little bit. I didn't.
Yeah.
I would just comment on that Raceway serves a fairly significantly larger population than Packard through to Mills River on Route 15. So it would serve more of the population of Jericho if we ran an effective bike path along Raceway. Get all of the foothills.
Oh, I see what you say. Yeah.
There's a lot of people. Yep. I'm gonna go to the person online who I cut off and then I'll come back to you. I can't see the names.
My name is Stacy, so thank you. I appreciate it. So the thing that I wanted to just point out is I would hope we would develop this not only for the people that want to utilize the road, but the people that live on the road as well. And I also appreciate what Heidi said, because I thought she brought up some very valid points. And I hope that we're just not trying to persuade people to think a certain way, but there are a lot of people that live on this road that could benefit from it, but we need to make sure it's done in a safe way.
So I think Catherine is next, and then Emily, and then Michael.
So Catherine, you're up.
You're muted.
There, thank you. I'm sorry it took so long, and it's actually Brian here. First of all, I think Peter had some very good comments too. But as I look at page 43, and remember, I get the idea that you folks in the Planning Commission are ready to make an endorsement. But on page 43, when I'm looking at and I see total project costs, we should be really fair about this. That if indeed you're talking about paving Raceway Road, you truly need to include the cost of Raceway Road to come up with any kind of comparative alternative here and an accurate alternative. So the total project cost line is very misleading. And I would be hesitant as a planning commission person and as a select board person to make any kind of recommendation without the total costs involved. I can't emphasize that enough. And that was brought out very strongly in the July 23rd meeting, where these same alternatives were presented. Don't let that one go, please. My other comment, and I think the first individual might have been, wasn't Heidi, but well, it was Heidi that said, yes, we need to be open about this. And my other thought is that, did the Stantec folks, did you consider the use of North Main Street as part of the alternative as a path towards Mills River Park? Because if you went behind the Davis Farm where the path, the old B&L railroad line went, and then utilize South Main, my goodness, the views are tremendous and there's very little traffic. So either the old rail bed all the way or consider using South Main Street. And I'll jump off. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know the
Well,
answer to that.
using the rail bed all the way was not a viable option because there's the river on the other side. Once you cross Raceway Road, that portion of the rail bed has been, well, some of it's not there because of the river, and if you were to try to utilize it, there'd be multiple rivers.
I understand that, Linda, but again, if you go towards use North Main Street, that removes the whole area where the river has changed course. So again, we need to get out of the box here.
That would run it into the commercial district area.
The commercial district area, which has very little activity and much less activity than certainly Route 15. Or remember, you're going to route people onto Raceway Road, which, as you say, has 745 vehicles per day. That commercial district has nowhere near that level of traffic.
Wait, who's next in the queue?
Emily.
Emily.
Hi, thank you. I am relatively new to Jericho, moved here in June and happy to be here. And I'm excited about this project when I saw it on the town website recently. That's what brought me to this meeting primarily. And I'm just one of many opinions, obviously. But I do love any biking opportunity. I moved here from Burlington where I biked all the time. And so I've been trying to navigate my biking patterns in a new community. And just my thoughts on this route is that I live next to Jericho Elementary, and going to Mills Riverside Park, I typically take Route 15 to go to the market, I would take Raceway, and definitely I as a cyclist, I'd be willing to go a bit out of my way to avoid Route 15 for sure. That's like my biggest goal is to avoid Route 15. And so the dirt road is for me not a big obstacle. The potholes I can easily navigate around on my bike if there happen to be several. So just kind of want to say that I think separating from the most traffic is always the most appealing to me. Raceway has far less traffic, obviously, than Route 15. Obviously, an ideal situation is, you know, being completely separate from cars in some capacity. But yeah, I just sort of wanted to put my 2 cents in there as someone who enjoys biking at any chance I can. And I'm just looking forward to seeing how this moves forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. We also have a bike ped committee in town that you might want to look into or learn more about or correspond with.
For sure. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Michael.
Hi, thank you. This is actually Kelly Evans of Mansfield Views on Bittersweet Lane. And so I just had a couple of comments. So thinking about what I believe it was Heidi said about possibly doing the direct route on Route 15, considering the time of year that we're going to be using our bikes and probably getting out and walking, thinking about like businesses, Kate's food truck, you know, being open in the summertime and, you know, possibly kids being out of school at that time and maybe not wanting to cut across and go around Raceway, maybe just wanting to go straight down Route 15. Are we going to maybe have some issues with that around that time of year? So just thinking, you know, spending all that money for people to maybe just go a little bit further past Raceway to maybe go to Kate's or something like that on a Friday night, Saturday night, whatever, on their bikes instead of going the safe route that we're trying to establish for them. So just trying to maybe be considerate of all of those options. And we did read the report, and I was a little concerned about some things that we saw in the report, that those of us down here on Bittersweet Lane were consulted and invited to the March 28th meeting when I know at least 5 of 7 of us did not get invitations to be part of the meeting about the rail trail. So I think it's just a little concerning for us. I do support the hybrid model. I would be concerned if they did go with the option 2 with down here with all the flooding issues we've had to experience in rebuilding of the riverbank behind our homes. If we were to do that and it's, you know, I think you said $2.3 million and then the possible need to rebuild that area in the future.
Okay, thank you. Jim.
One thing I'd like to say that I've observed about this report from the beginning, I really think we're mixing carrots with potatoes, that we really need the overall strategy for how people and bicyclists are going to move around all of this area. And looking at it as this way or that way, I think could cause you to miss, like what Brian said, if I recognized his voice. The select board recently, and I was asked to speak for Glenn Martin tonight, who's not able to be here. He arranged a group to connect from Kate's Dollar General to South Main, and they were flatly rejected by the select board. And that is a strategic component of the success of the commercial district, because southbound cars on Route 15 can turn off at Dollar General, go down onto South Main, and literally you could create what you guys have been talking about in the commercial district. If you roll back to the study that was done that stalled. So efforts of those 3 landowners have been rejected patently by the select board because when we do all these studies, we create knowledge silos and we forget the gestalt of you really want to have a walkable community on both sides of the river. And if you listen carefully to the Raceway people, you're talking about management of the resource. One, through trucks should probably be banned. You probably should not be able to go down Raceway with a truck from 15. So that's a management issue. Traffic calming on Raceway sounds to me like it's absolutely essential. And the fact that we don't have the gestalt and the integrated planning, we built the bridge on Raceway and we didn't make it pedestrian friendly. So as you look at all of these issues, because we don't have a gestalt, we do not have quality control, and we then have silos of individual thought processes, we miss all of these strategic components as we spend tons of money on studies. I could have built all of this just on the price of the studies that we've spent in the time that I've been here that never got anywhere. So I do think there's some really good stuff that the planning commission can say. It's really important to get speed and distracted driving and careless drivers under control on Raceway, regardless of what you do.
Yeah.
Okay, loud and clear. That's your job. Tell them that's the way you want to see it, regardless of which one's chosen. That you really do want the loop of South Main and North Main from Dollar General all the way down through the commercial district. That's a really smart thing. Those people are my age or older. They're willing to do something for the community and they were rejected. And it was pointed out by Glenn that it was recommended by you in the town plan. And there's money there that could be employed. You've got people willing to cooperate and you've got people concerned about losing this and that. And I just think that if we can use a little artificial intelligence and pull all of these thoughts together and put a real pile driver, boil it all down, give it to the select board with the planning commission, distilling it and boiling it down and saying, we want traffic slower, safer, no distractions, and we want people to be able to walk on Raceway.
Okay, so that's a good segue. We have 3 minutes left. So now back to the planning commission. So our task, our agenda said we were going to review this report and consider recommending an alternative to the select board. We're not obligated to do that. It sounded like people were mostly comfortable with alternative 3. We heard concerns about alternative 3. What I have in mind, if planning commission people want to go forward with supporting that alternative, that we would submit that in writing to the select board in advance, and our written memo would include the caveats, what Jim was just mentioning, and several of the things that came up today. And also a list of questions for the consultant, which we also recorded as part of this conversation today. So does anybody not want to do that?
I could offer, oh, sorry.
I think we're fighting over whether the perfect is better than good enough, and we've waited years for this kind of thing. We can keep arguing over whether it's not exactly perfect, or we can at least do something and get it moving.
And they're not mutually exclusive. We can do one of these alternatives and add another one as things evolve. Okay, so I think what I would like to have is a motion to submit a memo to the select board that the planning commission supports alternative 3, but with the following questions and concerns, which would be written up to basically reflect the conversation that we heard, comments that we heard from the public tonight about Raceway is a critical linchpin, whether it's paved or not paved. If it is, regardless, it needs traffic calming and Route 15 crossings are still a concern, that if the town is going to continue to invest in pedestrian infrastructure, the town really needs to prioritize maintenance of that infrastructure, whether it's seasonal maintenance, repair maintenance, when things, it's not acceptable to tell the whole town, yeah, we've spent millions of dollars so everybody can walk, and then have a pedestrian crossing not work for 5 months. That is not going to be go forward okay. Like, we need a much better solution to those kinds of, whether it's spare parts or spare contractors or whatever. So something to that effect would be the motion that I would entertain. But Heidi, do you have a comment before we do that?
I was going to make a motion, Susan.
Go ahead.
If I could add on to what you said, though, I would like to make a motion that the Planning Commission put forward a statement that we are very keen, you can choose a different word, to continue moving forward with building the bike and pedestrian infrastructure. We are, so we're supportive of moving forward. If these are the 3 alternatives to be considered, we support number 3 with all the final, with the questions and comments that you just listed. So it starts with a motion of support for moving forward. It says if these are the 3, we support the 3rd. And we want to make sure the questions and comments that were raised today are addressed in some form. And doing nothing is worse than doing something.
I second that. Okay, Sarah seconds. Good, ready to vote?
I'm a little uncomfortable leaving the door open for somebody to say, oh, they had some objections to it. Let's spend another 3 years investigating how we solve those.
Oh, I agree. That's what.
But I think we reiterate what you said, which Heidi also echoed, which is doing nothing is not an is not.
If the alternative to doing 3 is doing nothing, do 3.
Right, and
Yes, agreed, Eric.
Nothing's perfect. Everything has its shortcomings, but regardless of those shortcomings, we want to address them as best we can, but we'd still like to move forward with number 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so Heidi made the motion, Sarah seconded.
Yes.
Are we ready to vote?
Ready to vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I'll volunteer to write the memo and ask Linda to submit it. Everybody can look at it before we submit it, but we won't discuss it further. It'll just be submitted. Okay? Yep. Okay. It's 9 o'clock, so we will, I think we have to stop here. So we will, table the rest of our items. Just if I could just do one thing. So our next meeting is February 20th. And Linda has planned for us a meeting with David White to begin the process of overviewing the village center and character-based zoning, which we have a bylaw modernization grant to do. And we're also going to hopefully look at the 60% wastewater report. Maybe that would be the hope. And then the item that we tabled from tonight, the town plan goals, we will also put that on the agenda. That's February 20th. And then March 5th is town meeting. I'm away. Linda's away for the week leading up to the town meeting. And you're away. So I guess on the 20th, we'll have to decide if we're gonna have a meeting on March 5th. Are you here on the 20th?
I am.
You are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I only have like 1 or 2 kids. I only have 1 day of work after.
Okay. Can you guys not talk? Because
sorry.
because on the Zoom, I know you can't hear
I've been
anything.
there, I've been on
Thank
that
you
end.
so much.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
I am here. 20.
You are,
Yeah.
okay, so we can have a meeting on the 20th, but we'll decide if we'll have a meeting on the 5th. Okay,
Well, before we move on though.
Yeah.
You remember how last planning commission meeting, we talked about 1 update versus 2 for the zoning? Emergency preparedness
Yes.
things, village center.
Mhm.
I think I already shared with you that David and I discussed it in more detail, and we actually came to the conclusion that we think doing the 1 update would be most efficient. And if you agreed, to that, so I just wanted to update the PC that that's the approach that we're gonna take. So we can talk more about it. But just so that we're clear, like that's the path now. I know we had said before we thought we might do 2 separate updates.
Right.
We're gonna.
There's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
There's synergy. All the hearings would be the same. It's pretty technical on the character-based zoning side. The consultant's doing the majority of the work. I think it's a good idea. Okay, anything else before we adjourn?
Just I want to offer up, right now I've been able to take off work on town meeting day. So if we need somebody on that day to be part of a table or whatever, I know I haven't been able to be useful at some of the other outreach tables, but I can on the 5th. So sign me up.
Great.
I'll put that back on the agenda for the 20th.
Yeah. And we can also do some of that through email.
Yeah.
About people that have ideas about how we should use the table, audio, visual, cookies, whatever.
Come to the dark side.
Yes.
We have cookies.
Okay. Really, really good discussion. Thank you, everybody. Yes, Eric?
Move to adjourn. I would like to ask one question. I have one concern I'd like to bring up. When can I bring that up if we're adjourning? It's about sidewalks in the town of Jericho.
Probably the best thing to do would be to contact Linda ahead of our next meeting. And then depending on how that conversation goes, then you're welcome to come to our next meeting, or you can always email Linda and me directly. Or we can come into the town hall and meet with you on your own whenever you want.
That's
Is that a
Yeah,
select
sure.
board question as well?
I guess that's what I'm saying.
Sidewalks.
Yeah,
It
which is
is.
really, yeah, so,
And a planning as well, because it involves the planning commission as well.
yeah, we'll help you, whatever. So I think the best place to start is with Linda,
Very good.
and then she can advise you how to navigate. But you can come here anytime and talk to
Very
us.
good.
Yes.
I will do that.
Okay, great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to you, Eric. You had a motion to adjourn.
I had a motion to adjourn.
Sabina seconded. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Okay, thanks, everybody.